street fashion in a country like India? What is the potential for slow, sustainable fashion, and can we find solutions that are better for people and the planet? We have Priyanka Khanna, Head of International Expansion at Fashion for Good, joining us. We have Mayura Davda Shah, Founder and Creative Director at MAYU, and we have Professor Dr. Binaya Bhushan Jaina of NIFT, Bhubaneswar. She's also the Chairman of the Textile Association of India, the Odisha unit. Priyanka Khanna, to you first. Tell us about Fashion for Good, and what is it, what does it do, and what has your experience been like engaging with Indian brands?
Thank you. Fashion for Good basically is a global platform. The purpose of Fashion for Good is to scale technology innovation in the fashion industry to make the fashion industry more sustainable. The broader level goal being bring the industry from these traditional methods to more modern advanced methods and reduce the overall carbon emissions that the industry creates. We are a 5-year-old initiative. We are based out of the Netherlands, but it's a global initiative working with the industry across the board. And we spent the last 3 years in Asia. In 3 years, I think particularly based out of India, we've engaged with almost all of the Indian industry, talking about manufacturers, brands, and technology innovation. And I think it's quite fantastic to see that India is this absolutely amazing market, which is uniquely positioned. It's not just a production market. It does have over 15,000 manufacturers producing for brands across the world, but it's also producing for domestic consumption. It's a huge consumption market with 1.3+ billion people who are now starting to get, even with the growth happening, they're starting to become bigger and bigger consumers for the world in general. So India seems to be sitting in this amazing point where it has the opportunity to adopt very quickly and change very quickly into more sustainable practices, and then become a circular sourcing or a more sustainable sourcing region for the world, because it is a very important market for the world, production market, but also educate and start changing and building newer practices within the country. So our experience in general with the industry, I think there is a lot more advancement that you see with the bigger brands, as you said in your session also. But when you talk about Indian industry, I think it is still learning. It's still at a nascent stage to understand what sustainability means, what carbon emissions are. We see very, very pioneering brands and manufacturers who are actually taking huge commitments and making big opportunities, or let's say changes in the supply chain at the moment. But
इसी की हम यहाँ पर बात कर रहे हैं मैम कि कैसे इंडिया में, इंडियन मार्केट में इसको लेकर चैलेंजेस हैं और क्या यहाँ की ज़रूरत है। यहाँ पर मैं आपके पास आना चाहूँगा मयूरा। हम बात कर रहे हैं कैसे ज़्यादा सस्टेनेबल बनाया जा सकता है फैशन को, और आपका जो ब्रांड है वो सस्टेनेबल लग्जरी के लिए जाना जाता है। किस तरीके के मटेरियल आप इस्तेमाल करते हैं उसके बारे में बताइए, और क्या ज़रूरत है आप समझते हैं इसके लिए।
Sure, thank you so much. So MAYU जो हमारा ब्रांड है वो इसी प्रेमिस पे बनाया गया है कि we offer fashion, premium fashion, luxury fashion, but in a very sustainable manner, as sustainable as we can make it with the use of innovative alternative materials. जैसे कि हमने शुरुआत की fish leather से, हालांकि ये एनिमल ओरिजिन से आता है, फिश से बनाया जाता है. दिस इज एक्चुअली अ बाय प्रोडक्ट ऑफ द फिश प्रोसेसिंग इंडस्ट्री. एंड अगर आप इसका प्रोसेस देखेंगे राइट फ्रॉम द सोर्स टिल द एंड, ये रिलेटिवली काफी ज्यादा सस्टेनेबल है अगर आप इसका इम्पैक्ट देखोगे एनवायरनमेंट पे. तो हमने शुरुआत की फिश लेदर से, जैसे दिस इज साल्मन लेदर, दिस इज वन ऑफ आवर प्रोडक्ट्स, एंड दिस इज वुल फिश लेदर. ये हम आइसलैंड और जर्मनी से इंपोर्ट करते हैं. एंड उसके बाद हमने शुरू किया वीगन फैशन की तरफ देखना वेरी सीरियसली. सो देन वी स्टार्टेड विथ पिनियाटेक्स, जो कि पाइनएप्पल के पौधे से, एज एन उनके पत्तों से जो फाइबर्स एक्सट्रैक्ट होते हैं उनसे बनाया जाता है. सो दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ द मटेरियल. एंड अभी हम देख रहे हैं टू गो मोर एंड मोर इनटू वीगन मटेरियल्स जो कि सारे प्लांट बेस्ड होंगे. एंड an exciting update that I'm happy to share today is that we're also looking at developing our own material made out of a fruit byproduct which is widely available in India, in our country.
All right, we have Chirag Tekchandani, co-founder and CEO of the Bombay Hemp Company, joining us. Thanks, Chirag. Good to have you on our show. Also, you know, we started off by asking how is it possible to address fast fashion issues in a country like India? But let me turn that question around and ask it to you in a different way. What about in a country like India? Does that also not mean equally that we have a potential for slow, sustainable fashion given our size?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on the show as well, and pleasure to be amongst a bunch of distinguished individuals that are trying to work in the space and make a difference. At our end, actually, we are known as Bombay Hemp Company. Bombay Hemp Company is a perspective that is different, and we've started Bohico with a solution-based approach in the sustainable textile space. We are in India's first industrial hemp and medicinal cannabis company. Hemp is also colloquially known as bhang in our country, Audyogik bhang. And we, around 10 years ago, started Bohico with a mission to educate, cultivate, and elevate India about the uses and benefits of hemp as a crop. So for everyone here and listening, hemp actually dates back to about the use of hemp dates back to early centuries. We had the Royal Navy, Cleopatra, all of them actually draped themselves in hemp, which is a fiber that is much stronger than when compared to cotton. It's also from an agricultural lens, it is the end that Bombay Hemp Company is working towards. The means of which is hemp, because the farmers in our country can actually benefit of growing this crop as well. So at a consumer end, it is not only a strong fiber that can last you much longer, but it is also it also cuts UV rays to about 98% as compared to cotton, which does it to about 92. It also is something that wears much better. So it's a little like wine. It ages much better. And you know, when the more you wear it, the softer it gets. So it washes pretty well. And over and above that, it also brings about benefit to the stakeholders involved in the community, right? Like, for example, our very farmers. India is an agrarian economy, and for the farmers here, they need alternative crops to grow, which they can benefit from. So a large part of India can actually grow Audyogik bhang in it only takes about 100 days to grow. It grows 12 feet tall. So here what I'm trying to say is that sustainable fashion is also about trying to look at it from a different perspective. Do your bit in the country to try and see how you can mitigate the crisis that we are speaking about on this, and bring about systemic change across the value chain, which is not only at a farmer level, but also for the consumer. You start consuming much lesser as a consumer, right? So you
तो हर जगह पर थोड़े चेंजेस की बदलाव की जरूरत है यहाँ पर. लेकिन आपने फार्म की यहाँ पर बात करी, तो फार्म टू फैशन कॉन्सेप्ट की अब बात करते हैं. प्रोफेसर बुनाया, मैं आपके पास आना चाहूँगा यहाँ पर. ये कॉन्सेप्ट जो है, ये आपने इंट्रोड्यूस किया था निफ्ट भुवनेश्वर में, जिसके बाद और जगह भी इसको रेप्लिकेट किया गया. इसके बारे में थोड़ा सा आप बताइए हमारे दर्शकों को.
जी, धन्यवाद. देखिए, फार्म टू फैशन कॉन्सेप्ट जो है, इसे बेसिकली रिवोल्यूशनरी एंड इंक्लूसिव कॉन्सेप्ट था, जिसको हमने हैंडलूम के ऊपर अप्लाई करने की कोशिश किया. दिस इज द फर्स्ट एवर इंस्टीट्यूशन इन दिस कंट्री एंड प्रोबेबली इन द वर्ल्ड where we have tried to integrate the entire eco-friendly fashion value chain, right from farm to fashion. What we have done, because we know in handloom, we never apply any synthetic fiber. We always apply natural fiber. And until we discovered the synthetic dyes, we used to apply natural dyes sourced from different plant or mineral sources. So we went around different parts of the country and found almost more than 200 varieties of natural dye yielding plants. In Odisha itself, we have got more than 100 different varieties of natural dye yielding plants itself. So we got about 10 different natural fiber yielding plants and about 60 different natural dye yielding plants in our campus, just to show the students that how you can integrate this into the handloom fashion value chain.
Wonderful. Professor, so that shows how you're tackling the problem at the source, right? Making sure you're not putting in clean dyes, etc. But what about the end? Because our clothes can take as long as 200 years to decompose. You, Professor, are also the chairman of the Odisha unit of the Textile Association of India. What can such bodies do, perhaps doing already, to produce less waste, to reuse it, to basically keep it out of landfills in the end?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. In fact, we have to keep ourselves away as much as possible from the synthetic fibers. You see, today almost more than 65% of all the fibers are from the petrochemical base. And this is the main cause of the blame for this fashion industry, polluting the environment in terms of GHG emissions or microplastic pollutions or even the water use. So when we have got a wonderful agroclimatic zones, why can't we produce different types of bast as well as leaf fibers, which can be used in the industry? And India produces almost more than 95% of all handloom produced in the world. We can at least, apply those in the handloom industry to bridge the gap between demand for and supply of sustainable fashion. We are trying to educate as an industry body to the, to go for both responsible production and consumption, trying to educate how they can bring in sustainability in the industrial practices by using different types of natural fibers, whether it is jute, hemp, or it's linen, or it's about kenaf or seashell or any other fiber.
And how do we magnify this? How do we take this to the mainstream? Priyanka Khanna, we asked this question a little while earlier. You have bigger fashion houses, brands, younger designers, they're all working on green strategies. But how do we get this down to the level of street fashion?
I think that's an excellent question, because innovation always ends up happening at the larger scale level, or let's say the big brand and manufacturer level. I don't know if there is a clear-cut answer that I have for you here, but there are 3-4 key aspects that matter at the street level. I think one is to reach the common ground, or let's say every little retailer. A huge role needs to come around the policy side. So policy makers need to get involved. And India has some great examples of what has happened in the past. Wastewater in the past in this industry has been a huge issue. And governments have come together, put policies in various regions to reduce this. And that has been applied for all the street level players, so all the smaller manufacturers to bigger manufacturers. And I think similar initiatives now need to come around newer materials, dyeing processes, all the other technology intervention that has been discussed here. So much more incentives for Boheco, for example, for building newer materials, or fish leather, for example. That role still needs to play by government, which we see happening a lot more at EU level, but not so much yet at India level, including textile waste, which I think is such a massive problem. And there is policy around the imported part, but there isn't much policy around domestic and pre-consumer waste as such. The second key aspect is, I believe, consumers. While consumers, I think, feel like they don't play a role enough, but consumers play a huge role. Yeah. If consumer is educated, they're able to ask questions, as mentioned in the previous channel, to understand where their clothes are coming from, who's making their clothes, what are the different aspects that they need to understand, and maybe further educate or push the industry to change. And
we're trying to do our little bit by doing shows like this. But Chirag, I loved hearing everything you said about hemp, and I really want to try and pick up something. I've never tried it, so I'd love to see what it feels like. But let me ask you this one question. Even natural fabrics can be a problem, right, at the scale fast fashion demands, because cotton, we're told, requires enormous quantities of water, pesticides in developing countries. Then this leads to droughts and other sorts of problems. It can't just be this or that. Sometimes even natural products can consume a lot of resources.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. But there are solutions that are available in this country if looked at right? So, for example, can't help but take it again. One can actually grow this crop, which is known as bhang, or has a very maligned sort of perspective when it comes to the end consumer. But as far as the farmers are concerned, this is a crop that can grow in alteration, or there's a lot of crop rotation that takes place in this country as well. In fact, it refertiles the soil. So for the benefit of the farmer, if he or she wants to grow twice a year, natural resources are available for them to take to, and in alteration with their steady and mainstay crops, actually grow things. Because right now it's all wild and feral that's growing in this country, right? Where the heartland of cannabis or hemp, it was all first found here in the Himalayas. And now the globe has made a billion-dollar industry out of it. So point being that we have available solutions within the country's heartland itself. And we should try and take to those, because one thing is for sure, that once we scale any natural commodity, that's when it becomes affordable for the end consumer to take to as well. Sustainable and slow fashion are generally fabrics and apparel that are priced at much dearer than the conventional fast fashion. But hey, what if you were told that for every one sustainable garment that you purchase and make your decision much more responsible towards the climate, you will not you will have to not purchase all those 4, 5 8 wash lasting fast fashion clothes that you typically pick up from retail. So I think it's right there. It's just that we all have to try and do our bit, and it's not asking for much, right? To just try to go with 10% of your wardrobe being sustainable, and that's a little attempt that all of us here can make.
Start somewhere.
मयूरा, इसी पॉइंट पर मैं आपके पास आना चाहूँगा। अब इतनी सारी हमने चीज़ें देखी कि हमारे पास क्या क्या ऑप्शंस हैं, किस तरीके से हम और अपने कपड़ों को, अपने वार्डरोब को बेहतर बना सकते हैं। आप क्या सलाह देंगे डे टू डे लाइफ में अपने वार्डरोब को और ज़्यादा सस्टेनेबल बनाने के लिए क्या करना चाहिए लोगों को?
Yeah, I think to Priyanka's point, I think I'd like to say that it all starts with being mindful as a consumer, being more aware. It starts with educating yourself, asking the right questions, doing your research. I think that's the first step towards adopting a sustainable lifestyle or having a sustainable wardrobe. I think one of the things that also matters there is putting quality over quantity, right? We're all attracted by the trends, ever-changing trends in the fashion space. But I think a lot is happening in the sustainable fashion scene as well. A lot of brands are offering, such as, what we do, one of the things that we do is we embrace a seasonless fashion. So we're offering products and designs that would be evergreen and can go from generation to generation. I think speaking to that effect, if you can try to say no to fast fashion, a little bit at a time, and also if budget is your concern, then I think a lot of interesting startups and brands are coming up that are offering pre-loved fashion. Also, when it comes to occasional wear, right? You can, when it comes to women, we only want to wear our lehenga ones or, wear it, as less as possible. So then I think there's also this option of rentals these days, which is quite interesting, right? It has been adopted widely in the US, but we're also seeing that being offered in India now, which is encouraging.
Yes,
so I think...
and we'll have some of them joining on our show in a bit.
थैंक यू सो मच आप सब लोगों का जुड़ने के लिए हमारे साथ प्रियंका, चिराग, मयूरा और प्रोफेसर विनया।